This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Draft grades are a funny thing because when draft grades get the most attention and get taken the most seriously, it's also the same time that draft grades mean the absolute least. See, since drafts are something that you really have to judge over time, but we're not built like that as a media apparatus to just judge something over time, all of the attention about how people feel about a draft class happens right after that draft class was selected. Before any of those players that was drafted step foot in the NFL facility, meet their coaches, learn a playbook, we've given them a grade, right? So the closer we are to the draft, or the closer we are into reacting to the draft, the less the grades mean. It just should be a general barometer of how you feel about that draft based on your own pre-draft process. When I give out grades during the draft, that's what I kind of mean by them. It doesn't mean that I'm dead set, this was a terrible draft, we should have no hope because I gave one of the highest drafted players they had in here a F grade for the thing. It's just like, hey, for me, I don't love that pick. I could be wrong. Let's see how it develops. Now we're at the point to where the 2023 draft class has had a year to develop. I had some thoughts coming into the draft about these players. I had some thoughts after the draft, and I had some thoughts during the season about these players. Now, let me make one thing clear, not just one thing, multiple things clear about these grades. One, think of these grades as a progress report, not a final grade. The book is not said and done on any of these players. There might be players on this list right now that have an A that might not play well in the next few years, and then the grade dramatically drops. There are players who right now have bad grades who might play tremendous next year, and those grades will rise. Think of this as a progress report. It's not a final grade. It's not all said and done for these guys, right? I usually like to wait about 4 years till I get to that point, but it is where they sit right now, February 15th, 2024. Now, that being said, I have some rules about this draft, right? Because this draft grading. My grades for me are going to work on a curve, which means there is a higher threshold for an A grade for a first round pick than a day 2 pick and a day 3 pick. If you need an example of this, think of Jed Wills. He's a C+ grade, right? A solid tackle at times who can be top 15 when he's playing well, but also struggles to be consistent. So he's not fully living up to that top 10 pick overall thing, but he's not a complete like washout like Luke Joeckel or something like that, where he just never was a productive player, or like Greg Robinson, right? He's a much better player than Greg Robinson ever was. Jed Wills is a C+ grade in the top 10 of the first round. Now, if you drafted Jed Wills on day 2, he'd be a B grade. If you drafted Jed Wills on day 3, he'd be an A grade, right? Where he's selected matters in where you grade that person, because Jed Wills has had a slightly above average career than most tackles taken in the top 10, right? You got to remember, don't just think of the success stories. There's a lot of failures at tackle in the top 10 every year. He's above average, but he's not great. He's not thriving or anything like that. But if he was drafted in the second round, his career right now would be pretty damn good for a day 2 or day 3. A round 2 or round 3 pick. If he was drafted in day 3, his career would be excellent for a day 3 pick. So that's how this works. If you need a reverse example, Jerome Ford, who is a day 3 pick, I would grade him out as a C+. Like, he has a better than average career than most people picked on day 3. If he was drafted day 2, it'd be a C-. If he was drafted in the first round, that would be a D grade pick. pick because it is worse than what you would expect out of a running back that you draft in the first round. Not the worst you've ever seen, but pretty bad. That is how I'm grading these players. I'm grading them on a curve because sometimes when we just give out the same letter grade to every round, it sends the wrong message to a lot of people because you get people treating 5th round picks and 6th round picks like 1st round picks. Like if I have to hear another person call a 6th, 5th, or 7th round pick, a day 3 pick, a bust, I'm going to slap somebody. I am. A day 3 pick could never play a snap for your team, and that would be a C-graded player because that's about average for day 3 picks, especially like a 7th round pick. So I am tired of people calling 2nd round picks, 3rd round picks, 4th round picks, 5th round picks, 6th round picks, 7th round picks bust. So what I am attempting to do is hopefully counteracting some of that by not grading them all on the same curve. Not grading them all on the same scale, putting this on a curve so people understand that you don't grade a 5th round pick like you grade a 1st round pick. Now that that's out the way, now that I have clarified why my grades are going to be the way that they are, Cedric Tillman, who I believe was drafted in the 3rd round, he gets a C grade for me. I give Cedric Tillman a C grade because he's about average for what you expect out of 3rd round receiver, right? He had a couple 100 yards receiving, no touchdowns, inconsistent play. It's about what you expect from a rookie 3rd round pick, right? I know we always think of the success stories when we think of whoever we want to think of in the 3rd round. Those success stories are usually outliers. Most 3rd round picks, you go just pick a random 3rd round pick. They usually have a career like Cedric Tillman is at least at the start. So see here, you see the potential. He had some good games. He had some good moments. He had some good bad games, and he had some horrible moments. He has to figure out what was the problem with him last year not being where quarterbacks expected him to be. Was that a study issue for him, or was that just miscommunication between the quarterback and him? Or is this something as simple as like, hey man, you just can't hear, right? Like where you were set up, you can't hear. I think, if I'm being honest with you, here's what I think Cedric Tillman's issue is in the NFL. He's coming from that Josh Heupel system at Tennessee. And from what I know of that Josh Heupel system is they will have the ball on the hash and then the wide receiver way the hell out. Wide, almost damn near the sidelines on the numbers at wide receiver. The reason that's important when it comes to the specific problems that Cedric Tillman is having is I don't know if this is a thing at Tennessee. But I would have to assume, given how far those receivers are from the quarterback, there's really no checks going on from quarterback to wide receiver. I think all of the checks that he's used to getting are from the sideline. And I think that's an issue for him because his pre-snap process as a wide receiver does not include in his mental checklist looking at the quarterback to make sure he didn't check something to you. He's probably used to checking to the sideline. Now, is this an excuse for the problems? Hell no. This is something that he should have figured out by like week 3. But I think this is a part of the problem. It shouldn't have gone on for a whole season, but this is a part of the problem. And he has to figure out why that problem exists and what he needs to do to make sure that that never happens again. Because if he gets to training camp and he has these issues, quarterbacks will just stop wanting him on the field, and your first 3 years of your NFL career are pretty much done. Like, you might get picked up by somebody else and it might work out. But as far as Cleveland, like, once the quarterback does not trust you, and he is dangerously on the verge of a wide receiver that quarterbacks don't trust. Joe Flacco was screaming at him, thought he threw an interception because of him. Deshaun Watson, similar thing. It even happened with his homeboy DTR, where he ran a fade in the corner of the end zone for what? So something's up with the checks. Is he looking for checks in the wrong places? Is he not used to checking for checks? Like, I don't know what it is, but it seems to me, I don't think he doesn't know the plays, right? I think he knows the playbook. I think he studies the playbook. It's not that difficult. He should know the plays. And it would be ridiculous to assume he doesn't know the playbook. So I'm not going to say it's the plays. He doesn't know the plays. I think this is him not knowing or understanding when the quarterback says this, I need to check to this. I think he's used to when the sideline gives me the Gatorade sign, that means I check the slant, right? Instead of when Deshaun Watson says deuce butter 45, that means I got to run a 9. Like he's not there yet with figuring out where those checks are. That is the most generous, good faith explanation I can have on what happened with Cedric Tillman this year. I don't think he doesn't read the playbook. I think that's a ridiculous assumption. I do think that this assumption is a little bit more plausible, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like, it's plausible in July. It's plausible in September. Hell, I'll even give you October and November. But, bro, once you get on the field, this really got to stop. Nonetheless, C grade for Cedric Tillman. If he fixes that stuff, which I think is very fixable, I think there's a good player there. I think there's a productive guy there, an 800 to 900 yard receiver, a very useful guy for the Cleveland Browns. But he has to figure that stuff out. And if he does, I think he'll be good. If he doesn't, then much like Anthony Schwartz, we'll talk about his potential for years, but he'll rarely get any snaps. Siaki Ika, unfortunately, gets a D this year. Now, he didn't play much, and when he did, it wasn't super spectacular. And my issue with this pick is it's a year in, and I still do not understand what is this man's pathway to getting consistent playing time on this team. Like with every other pick, I could tell you the pathway for them playing on the team. Like Cedric Tillman's pathway to playing on the team is so obvious, they traded DTR. So when you look at Siaki Ika, who was drafted on day 2, like Cedric Tillman, I believe, it's not a good sign that I look at that roster and go, there's no pathway for him to play. Like, I don't think they expect him to play next year. I think he's going to barely play, if anything. If he does anything, he might be behind Dalvin Tomlinson. Right, that's the only guy who has a similar build to him. I don't think you want him and Big Dalvin out there at the same time and double up on that. Like, that makes sense to me. I just don't understand the pick, the fit, all of it. It's a year in, and I have no clarity on it because he barely played. And it kind of confirms what I'm concerned about, because even when there were significant injuries on the defensive line, even when they had run game issues, they did not activate this man for anything. And look, that's not to say he's a bust. I don't think he can be a bust. He's a 3rd round pick, or that he was a waste of a draft pick. I would love to figure out what his pathway is to seeing the field, because it doesn't seem like there's a clear pathway. And I didn't love the pick to begin with. I thought there were other players who have performed a little better at that D tackle position. I'm blanking on the kid's name, but he was out of Bowling Green and he plays for the Green Bay Packers. He had a pretty good year. Not Carl Joseph. I don't know. It's Carl something, but y'all will tell me in the comment section down below. But Siaki Ika, he don't got no pathway to being on the field. Everybody else does, and that's the big concern. Now let's move on to the most successful pick in this draft, Dawand Jones, A+. Don't know what else to say. The brother shut down TJ Watt. He won all rookie. He was damn near a Pro Bowler. In my mind, he was a Pro Bowler. He was one of the best offensive linemen on an offensive line full of Pro Bowl caliber players. And he's about as good as you can hope for a 4th round pick. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Yes, does he have areas to improve? Sure. But if Dawand Jones never gets any better than he was last year, and you drafted him in the 4th round, that is a great 4th round pick. Hell, he can regress a little and still be pretty good. That's how good he was this year. So Dawand Jones, A+, as good as a 4th round pick as you could get right there. Like, basically, that's the ceiling on the 4th round. Like, you hit it. A reasonable ceiling, right? Like, okay, that's about as good as it can go. That's the ideal situation. Isaiah McGuire, I liked him. C+. He did not play much during the season, but he did play during the Cincinnati game. I thought he shined during the Cincinnati game. I think his pathway to play time is interesting, right? Because you got Obo Okoronkwo, but then you got guys like Alex Wright. You got guys like Zadarius Smith. And I think he's right in line with those guys. I think he's going to be more or less a 4-3 edge, a power four, a 4 and 4-eye type player for this team. And I think that's where he's going to live at. I think Alex Wright's going to get the chance to start if they don't bring back Za'Darius, which I think is possible they can still bring back Za'Darius. I think even if they do bring back Za'Darius, they might rotate him in a little bit more often than they did this year because they need to rotate in somebody behind Miles. I think he might get the call there. But yeah, pretty good pick here, at least better than average. I give it a C+. DTR, again, this is day 3 pick. I give him a B. I think a lot of people are harsher on DTR than what is necessary for a number of reasons. And none of these reasons to me feel like they have much to do with DTR, and they feel like they have a lot to do with everything else around DTR, and none of it really feels like his fault. The reality of the Browns fan base right now is that there are significant portions of the fan base for numerous different reasons, right, that don't want Deshaun Watson to be the quarterback. Some people don't want him to be there because they wanted it to be Baker, and it's not Baker, and they feel like that got robbed for him. Some people don't want him to be there because of the allegations of sexual assault that he has under his name. Some people don't want him to be there because other reasons, right? There's millions of reasons on why people don't want Deshaun there, and why there's a sizable, not the majority, but a sizable number of people who kind of actively root against Deshaun Watson, and in turn kind of root against the Cleveland Browns. And those people did DTR a big disservice, in my opinion, because since they were searching for a hero in the quarterback room so desperately, they took DTR's solid preseason and really got carried away with. Now, I remember saying when all of this preseason hype was happening that it was getting a bit far. Right. And this felt like it didn't have much to do with DTR. I remember when I was on Sports for Cleveland, we had a caller call in, and that caller told me that he's a mix between Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson or something crazy like that. And that's when I knew that this poor kid was doomed because he had become a victim of something he had no idea was coming, right? Which is the anti-Watson people made him their champion in the anti-Watson debate. And since he had that good preseason, it put fuel on the fire to that. The second he disappointed those expectations, people were mad at him for not living up to the unrealistic expectations that they set. And then they got mad at him because he was what was standing in the way of the guy that they nominated as the next anti-Watson champion, Joe Flacco. So they got even madder at DTR. I feel like he got a raw deal from the fan base. I feel like a bunch of people made DTR something that he was not ready to be, and then held him responsible for not living up to the expectations that they put on him. But if you look at it just objectively, this dude was a 5th round rookie quarterback, and he had a game-winning drive in an NFL football game. That is better than most 5th round picks. He deserves a B. Look, the preseason stuff there, I think is interesting. He's still a really good athlete. I still think that there's a lot you could do with him. And I think he still flashed potential of being somebody who could eventually be a productive player. He just wasn't ready to do it in year 1. Another thing that I felt like people did a disservice of when it came to DTR is how inaccurate all of his draft comps are. A lot of people see DTR run, they see him be athletic, throw on the run every once in a while, and they comp him to somebody like Deshaun Watson. He plays nothing like Deshaun Watson. He plays a lot like Brock Purdy. Like when you watch Brock Purdy, just from I'm not saying play level, play style. From a play style perspective, he plays identical to Brock Purdy, right? A little bit of that athleticism, but when he's working in the pocket, he likes to work on time. He likes to get in a rhythm, and he gets that ball out fast and quick and with zip. He's similar to Brock Purdy in that respect. If you're looking for a player comp for him, it's Brock Purdy. He had a rookie year. he looked like a rookie at times. There were other times where he looked like he had a lot of potential. I think there are signs of a productive player in there, but I do worry about him in a new offense, right? I think he was a good fit for that Stefanski, Gary Kubiak kind of strict system where it's about getting the ball out on time and with timing and accuracy and processing. I thought that was a good fit for him. If this system moves to something that's more about being a game changer instead of a game manager, so it's about dropping back, seeing and diagnosing and then throwing, I don't know if that fits his strengths. I think he's a pre-processor, right? I talked about in Deshaun Watson's video, Deshaun Watson is in that category of quarterbacks who are a post-processor. Like they just process things better post-snap than they do pre-snap, and they're better off relying on their post-snap reads than pre-snap reads. I think DTR is a pre-processor. I think he's better when he's prepared. Obviously, if that Baltimore game didn't show you he wasn't a post-processor, I don't know what would, because if he was a post-processor, he would be able to survive in that element, but he didn't because he's a pre-processor. He needs to be very prepared for it. He needs to have scripts and design plays and all of this stuff kind of handed out. Like you need to build the game around him a little bit more than you would need to build a game plan for Watson. But I do think that there's a lot there with him. I think DTR is a pre-processor. He's similar to Brock Purdy. I worry about him in this system change. And in the long run, I don't think he's a good fit, to be honest with you, to be a backup behind Deshaun Watson. Like the skill sets athletically are similar, but as a passer, he is very much a completely different deal than Deshaun Watson, to the point to where I don't think he's a good fit to be the backup for Deshaun Watson. Think he does have the production, he does have the potential to be a productive quarterback in this league, but I think he's probably going to be better off when he's no longer Deshaun Watson's backup, however that happens and wherever that happens, because he's just not a good fit for this. And honestly, if I were him, think about that Shanahan tree, think about places where Brock Purdy would be successful. That's also where DTR could be successful, because very similar there. And I think that's his comp. For me is Brock Purdy, just play style wise. I'm not saying he's going to become the player that Brock Purdy is or anything like that, but I'm saying he plays very similar to Brock, and I think he'll be at his best when he's allowed to do that. All right, Cameron Mitchell, I give him a B+. He was very productive when he was out there. I thought he was an intriguing enough player to want to see more out of. And for your second to last pick in the draft, I believe he was either 5th or a 6th round pick. That's spectacular to get out of there. So B+. Luke Whippler, I give him a C+. Thought he did a fine job when he was out there. And to be honest with you, he played in the game this year, and that's better than most 6th round picks. So he gets a C+ here. So those are my grades for the Browns draft. If I have to review it overall, I would say day 2 is a bit of a disappointment. I wasn't thrilled about the Siaki Ika pick when it happened. A year later, I'm not very thrilled with it. Cedric Tillman, I was on the fence about it. I didn't expect the Browns to go after Cedric Tillman. I thought it'd be like a Jalen Hyatt or something else like that. But, you know, he's a 3rd round pick. He had rookie issues. I'll give that another year before I'm ready to condemn it or point in one direction where the sea is going. He has some very correctable issues in year 1 that he needs to correct in going into year 2. You saw the potential there, but you would love to have a little bit more than a C grade and a D grade for your day 2 picks. Now, that would have been enough to almost sway this draft in one direction, but Andrew Berry did such a good job in day 3 of this draft that it ends up kind of breaking even, to be honest with you. DeJuan Jones, like you get DeJuan Jones in the back half of the draft, this draft turns good. That's how good of a player DeJuan Jones has been. Getting a quarterback who can win you a game, go on a game-winning drive with the 5th round pick, ended up mattering. And then you got a 5th round pick for your other backup. So you didn't even... Technically, you didn't spend a draft pick. That's good here. Getting a solid depth piece in Cameron Mitchell and a guard/center that can play year 1 in Luke Whippler. Very good stuff there. So a very strong day 3 that carries what is a average to lackluster day 2 and a non-existent day 1. But that's my thoughts. That's my regrading of the 2023 draft. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. You guys have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.